So Aristo is with us again today, and it's 11:18 my time, and I don't know if my clock is exactly in sync with his clock, but
518.
5:18. So the 18 is the same. So
Exactly. Add the digits of 11, 18, 8, 9, 10, 11. So the number is 11 anyways.
okay. So anyway, we've been he and I have been talking about some of the proposals that have been on the table as far as creating a new structure and funding and the methods of funding that. And I don't know how much of that he's going to bring into this conversation, but let's see where it goes, Aristo.
Okay. Ron, we'll see where it goes. Okay. Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm late. Not that it matters to you. You'll hear the video whenever you do. I just want to say one thing. Ron and I had a small disagreement in the beginning. And this was basically where I said, look, one of the things you need is to be able to help people learn sovereignty, not in the terms of informing them about sovereignty, but to help them engage in small bits of sovereignty in order to test sovereignty on themselves in the manner that they can so they have an experience of it. What is sovereignty? We're so brainwashed that you cannot teach people in theory. And Rod said, well, you have to change the system first to give them a free system, then they can learn sovereignty. Well, sovereignty for me is not being in an environment that lets you be sovereign. Sovereignty means claiming your freedom, and it doesn't have to be violent. Now, here's an example. Ron, in his previous video, described the health stuff, that he took Celtic sea salt and somebody advised him to do that, and his symptoms got worse. Then he took distilled water, his symptoms got better. He did the grounding, it helped a little bit because that's what happens. You get an influx of some healing mode, but if you still have the main problem unaddressed, it compensates. It's like a tolerance effect. So he's realizing, and then they tell him to take so many liters of distilled water, and he can't. The body says no. And what I'm saying is that there is no such thing as a program that will solve everything, even in small things. There is no such thing as a silver bullet. There is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all solution. And also there is no such thing as a given solution for a given person that can be laid out from start to finish perfectly. Why? Nature doesn't work that way. Because nature works on feedback. Nature works cybernetically from the word kybernesis in Greek, which means to govern. Nature is self-governing. Life is self-governing. So what we want to be is self-governing. That is what sovereignty is. And becoming natural is being self-governing. That means that if you can be self-governing in one area of your life, then that experience can transfer into other areas of your life through your initiative. Not through automatically, unconsciously maybe, but through your initiative. Because somehow you realize what it is. It's the same pattern, fractally transferred from one context to another context. So master your health. A lot of people say they cannot. A lot of people are in despair, but I don't know them. I don't know how much of their despair is really, if I were in their position, would I be as much in despair or not? Maybe I would. I cannot know them, and that's the point. We're talking about sovereignty as something you reclaim where you can reclaim it. Since we're all here listening to Ron, that means we can make a choice to do so. That means we have questions. That means we're not zombies. I don't speak about all of humanity. I just speak about the specific audience. Let's go to our own backyards before we care about what happens in the town, the neighborhood, and on the planet. Because if you can be sovereign to one degree, you can extend that degree. There may be difficulties as you extend your horizons and challenges, but each time you learn sovereignty. That's how you learn sovereignty, by engaging, not in the system, engaging with the system, but engaging with life. So I use Ron again as an example because we all know him. He's the common reference point, my host here. So, his health is a lesson to all of us because he's going through something that's specific. And we can't diagnose it because we're not Ron. That's the lesson. I cannot diagnose Ron beyond a certain point, even if I'm psychic, because I am not Ron. But Ron can diagnose himself. This is where sovereignty begins. You diagnose yourself, you know yourself, you understand yourself. And so you awaken the intuition of sensing things, of saying, okay, here are all these healing modes. Let's take a sniff of that distilled water. How does my body respond to it? Does it say, oh, wow, give me that? Or does it gag? You know, I don't believe in taking your own medicine, gagging, puking, and suffering through it. I believe that if something is healthy, your body is going to respond with a sense of relief, something. You can sense it. Relaxation. The first time I took vitamin D a couple of years ago, my body just went through a massive, ah, a sigh. No, no itching, no symptoms. They said, oh, don't take this. It's going to create
That's
whatever.
what niacin does. Niacin, which is a B vitamin, makes you itch.
Yeah, I mean vitamin D3. And yeah, niacin will expand your capillaries and will make you itch, and it will bring a flush, and they say, and all of these things. But for me, vitamin D3, I took a lot of them. I took 4 or 5, I don't know, 50,000 IU, and you're not supposed to, but other people say you are. And I felt a tremendous sense of cellular relaxation. I love, you know, I was like, wow, this is better than, you know. But it lasted for about a week, and then the effects were less because my body said, okay, you dealt with this now. Now you need to deal with something else. And so it brought up the second problem, the second layer, which was other toxins. So I went to heavy metal cleansing stuff, just chlorella, and then omega-3 stuff, and that was fine for me. And lately there were other toxic effects where I had to go to the store, and they have basically little old ladies up in the mountains picking herbs. They package them, you know, so there's all these dried leaves everywhere. And I just felt it through and picked my own little recipe of tea with honey and lemon and my own, you know, and I know the beekeeper, so the honey's good. And so I realized that with the right combination, it helped me. But I can't recommend this to other people. I can say, okay, here's an option, or here's another option, here's another option. So if you can take the options, and there are several options out there for anything, and you can choose your own path where you already can make choices. I'm not saying go and, you know, solve the banking system or solve solve the wars and solve the energy crisis and all of these things. I'm saying, where do you still have self-control, self-sovereignty? Let's take the word control out of it. Where can you still make choices and follow up through those choices? You know, well, at least some of us can still make choices as far as what we eat to a certain point. Do we have to eat everything the alternative people tell us? No. Every environment has opportunities. You see, if you have the motive and you have the means, and the means in this case is your ability to choose, your ability to go to a store, any store, and check out the options. Maybe they don't have any, so you go to another one. There are means. And then you find opportunities popping up where you least expected them. I used to buy a lot of new age books, a lot of philosophy books, you know, spend a lot of money on these things, never got anything out of it, not much. And then I went to the internet years later and I said, look, I don't have money to buy books. I don't want to get a credit card and be getting shit online. So I want to make an intention. Anything I really need from philosophy, metaphysics, whatever, anything I need is free on the internet, freely given information. That's useful. I will only access freely given information. That's all I need. And eventually it started happening. I would just intuitively Google and pick up on information that was exactly what I needed and mix and match the information, and it turned far more valuable than anybody's book. Things that, and it allowed me to intuit and fill in the gaps and complete the information and understand things in the way I couldn't understand before. And I didn't have to pay a red cent for that information. Now, over the years, you know, the free information is getting less, but other stuff pops up. You know, you have to keep looking. So you start with your health. If you don't have some modicum of health, you can't do crap. If you don't have some modicum of clarity in your mind, you can't do crap. So you look toward things and test them. A lot of us want advice, solution, because we don't want to risk making mistakes. We don't want to risk going, wasting time on dead ends, especially in alternative spirituality. You can meditate for years before you realize it's a waste of time, or it's not a waste of time. It might take a long time. So you have to really learn to discern, and you learn to discern by practicing engagement with whatever resources you have. So Ron here, I don't consider Ron's videos, I do consider them valuable for what he says, but I also consider Ron, his primary mode for me is being an example. So he goes around and rants and bitches about things, and that's being an example of shit we all go through, of all our frustrations. And then he resolves something, and that's an example. He enters another crisis, and that's an example. And he works through it sincerely. It's not his philosophy or special ideas or big inspirations for me that stand out, but the fact that he is a human example. And that's why often I refer to Ron as an example. He teaches me, and I'm basically communicating what I learned from his example that can be extended. The fact is, people, everybody has an opportunity to be sovereign somewhere. As long as you can stand up and make a choice and know that you're making a choice, sometimes by the resistance to it, sometimes you're making a choice and it's your free choice because of all the crap that stands up against you. So when you have criticism, know that maybe that's an indication that you're actually making a right choice. But I can't generalize again. I'm sorry. I cannot give you the security of a solid piece of advice that you can just hold on to like a teddy bear. And something that, or like a vehicle that'll carry you through to the fucking promised land. No. The only thing that's going to carry you to the promised land is your own 2 feet. That's why God gave us feet and legs, the ability to walk and run. But if we're toxified, we can't. So we learn how to beat the mind control, and we test it on our own. You see, the greatest value is not to teach people things, but to teach them how to learn their own things. That's what I mean by teaching sovereignty. Can we actually provide enough examples of people learning to be sovereign that others can pick up on it on their own terms? That's what, if somebody was funding a project, I would propose this. Create a media operation that's based on this. I'm providing examples, not so much telling people do this, do that, do the other, but telling to say, this is what I did and how I did it, and the other person doing the same thing, and the other person doing the same thing, and eventually you pick up on the examples in your own way. You can test this a little bit, that a little bit, and if it takes too long to figure out, that means your sensitivity is not deep enough. It's not activated. You're desensitized. We need to set, like Ron, for example, has sensitized his body sense. He was able to do, and not really. I mean, it's normal. If you drink too much of something and your body says, I had enough, you're going to feel like you want to vomit it up. You're going to reject it. If you smell something too much and your body can't take it, if it creates an allergic response, you're going to reject it. Everybody has that. All we need to do is recognize it. That's where we've been desensitized. So this is what discernment is, another way of saying resensitization to life, because life is based on self-governance. All life, all ecosystems are self-governing. They're interdependent, interconnected, and self-governing. So there is no overlord of life. There may be an energy source coming through, a life source, but it doesn't call the shots. Everything is self-perpetuating and self-governing, interactive, interrelating. Perhaps we can model our world on something like that. Instead, we have the haves and we have the have-nots, and the have-nots want to have. And that's all it amounts to. The haves want to regulate the having, and the have-nots want to just keep having. And it's all boiled down to that. Well, if you're a have-not, you have to realize that you're probably not completely a have-not, or you'd be dead. So wherever you do have, you need to learn, very likely, to regulate what you do have, to self-govern what you do have where you have it. If you can, that is how I believe we can learn. We can learn how to learn. Because I do not believe ignorance is bad, because technically ignorance, the way most people talk about it, is just being uninformed. So being informed may not be enough, however, because you need to process the information. You need to be able to make sense of it. You need to organize it. And that means being sovereign over how you do so, taking responsibility, being responsible. So all of these things are about us being sovereign. And I don't believe we have to create a nanny system, a system that helps, that nurtures us completely. So basically, that's not sovereignty, that's being taken care of. And I'll tell you, I believe that if you create a system off the bat that essentially takes care of everybody and only, people are going to just fall asleep, and they will become lazy. Now, I don't advocate laissez-faire, the extreme conservative libertarian view of just, everybody has to compete, and whoever makes it, whoever doesn't make it, I don't believe in that uncompassionate type of thing. But I do believe that the greatest compassionate thing is to provide stimuli of motivation for people, to be motivated, and to give help when necessary. But at this point, people, there is no free ride. Apparently, whoever is going to give money, so to speak, it's not a charity. It's an investment. And that means it's what the bank does, technically. I think that those who are giving money are simply saying, look, we're going to do it like the bank was supposed to do it. We're just not going to be criminals about it. But we're still going to expect a profit. You work for us. You propose something, you work for us. So it's going to benefit us. Well, that's the thing. See, it's easy for the have-nots to tell the haves what to do. And that's where the haves don't want to be told what to do by the have-nots. But we need to be able to say, okay, haves and have-nots need to understand what's best for everybody. Because most of the time, the have-nots only look for what's best for the have-nots. And really, they don't understand that when you start draining funds from people, no matter how they took them, how they took these funds, maybe they stole them, it doesn't matter. It's their psychology. If you tell them that you have to just keep giving to us because we need it and you don't, they're not going to do it in the end, because they don't see anything coming back to them. They're saying, well, you have to do with half of what you've got now. It has to be cut off. Even if that's the right thing and the moral thing to do, they're not going to do it. And if some of them want to do it, there's going to be a whole bunch of others that don't. They're not just going to give away what their ancestors, by hook or by crook, really sacrificed in order to attain. It has to come out that it's going to benefit everybody. And we have to convince ourselves and others that it is in our best interest for everybody to be benefited. I think that's the one truth that people do not understand across the board. Have-nots think they understand it because they say, well, we're just going to have more anyway, so everybody benefits, and that's fine because we're the majority. No, we have to look at it from a point of view that how are you going to convince the other guy that it's in all of our best interests, and not only, but their best interest is all of our best interest? How is that going to work? How can we do this in steps? Now, this is not easy, and I'm not going to propose a solution here again. I'm just proposing what are the questions that need to be addressed. I mean, in my opinion, we're so lost that we don't even know how to ask the right questions. We don't know what's important. Where do we start? Where is our foundation? We keep thinking in terms of systems because all we know is a system. And a system is just a set of orders, of rules, guidelines. You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do the other. It's a system. I'm saying, what are the issues here? Why are people not motivated? I'm not talking about psychopaths. Why are healthy people who are not psychopaths really not motivated to commit? Now, we know about us, we're afraid, and we're unorganized, and we don't know, we're misinformed, disinformed, we're attacked. So we have those problems to deal with. We need to address those problems ourselves. We can, by beginning to become sovereign step by step in our bodies as much as we can. And believe me, when you take charge of your body, it can deal with a shitload of more toxins than whatever you think. I do believe that. I mean, some people claim you can walk into a vat of irradiated water you know, or heavy water and it'd be okay. I don't know. But at least we can handle the load that's being thrust upon us now. I'm absolutely sure of that. And I do believe that as the body detoxifies to the extent it can, once the body realizes that you're sovereign again, in your attitude, the mind starts clearing up. And the mind clearing up can come with solutions to be sovereign. In fact, that's when religious, spiritual people who believe in divinity will praise the Lord, so to speak, because they've been given the gift of clarity, which is their birthright. They've activated that right of clarity, of natural wisdom, of perceptivity, of health, and then they can feel divine grace through that. If you're burdened and you can't walk, then you want to say, do something for me. If you feel mobilized, however, you really have all of the means to do things for yourself to the extent that you can, and you will keep moving that way. And then your relationships with others will be as if God is putting their hand in. Your relationships with others, with circumstances, with your environment will be as if the divine is talking to you. It's all our relations, the thing that I talked about in the last video. So that's our problem. Right now, there's a dichotomy. There are the haves and the have-nots. And I know we need to become one, but first, let's balance ourselves as so-called have-nots. And we're not have-nots. We've got so much. First of all, we're very balanced, most of us who can even think. A lot of us are inspired. A lot of us can appreciate life a lot more than the so-called haves, who have a crap load of burdens. First of all, they're all competing with each other. There's backstabbing going on. There's factionalism. I mean, think about it. Would you really want to be in a circle of allies who are plotting behind your back in the name of just talking, where you don't know if they are or not? Would you want to be there and really be looking over your shoulder every 5 minutes, wondering what you're going to say? I mean, we're afraid that they're spying on us. These people live in an environment like that, where the closest people to them may betray them tomorrow, and thus they have to swear loyalty upon loyalty upon loyalty, and the smallest crack in that continuity of loyalty sends alarms. Nobody can really relax. Maybe some can. Maybe some have spiritual methodologies and all of this, and maybe some are okay. I don't know, but history tells us, I don't know about specific groups, I'm not talking about specific groups, but I'm saying history. History tells us that backstabbing abounds in those circles of haves, and that it's constant plotting and it's constant anxiety, and I'd be getting an ulcer at the very least if I was in those circles, let alone that the only one who can survive is the psychopath, because it all falls down to the lowest common denominator. Everybody else gets cut down because you can't be human and not trust others. So trust has to be based in those circles on rituals and formalities and a lot of things that are not, that we take for granted. Now, we get fooled by people, but, you know, technically most of us are not going to die when somebody betrays us. It's not the end. Maybe it is, but most of the time it's not. So let's appreciate something that we are, in many respects, the commoners, so to speak, are the haves, and the nobility elite are the have-nots. And that's what I believe that those circles need to realize. Do you really want to be in this kind of thing? A lot of people love it. Psychopaths love the game. They idolize chess. They idolize gaming. They idolize having minions on the board, on the battlefield, and sacrificing half of them and doing the other strategies and tactics, because they don't have empathy. You never empathize for your game pieces. You just move them around and the outcome and the joy of conquest. I'm not saying all of them are like that, or that it's even a them. I'm saying that in order to sustain that kind of environment of having and being in control, you have to make a lot of sacrifices, and that creates a certain mindset. And so how do we meet that mindset halfway without compromising ourselves? So I'm not, again, talking about specifics. On the other hand, there's this man who is known as the ambassador. Now, an ambassador has the job of first representing wherever they're coming from, but also conveying whatever they contact, the country where they're a guest in, for example, back to their country of origin. And they don't just, they're not a messenger. Basically, they are a diplomat. They try to reconcile. So let's all be ambassadors in that sense, true ambassadors between the haves and the have-nots who are not psychopathic. This is where I see this whole proposal thing. I'm not a type of person who looks at specific things of this is a specific system, 3-year plan, blah, blah, blah. Oh, no, it's not going to work. Oh, it is going to work. I look at the principle of it. I look at the archetype. What is the foundation of how we can work together? Because as far as the have-nots are concerned, saving face doesn't matter. I mean, really, there is no face to save. We've been screwed out the ass. We have no face. We barely have an ass left. You know, we're holding on to our dignity by a thread and learning to regain it step by step. And we want to be appreciated for that, at least. We may be ignorant. We may be stupid because we're dumbed down. We may be raped, but it's easy to laugh at a victim. It's easy to downgrade the victim. Why don't you help the victim? So maybe some of us would like to see a proposal from the other end that says, okay, you guys are ignorant. So we have a proposal to help your ignorance, you know, because it's in our best interest for you to not be ignorant. Okay, let's work together to solve this. And I don't mean disinformation. It's one thing because anything can be manipulated. Let's face it, man. You cannot have a distilled environment of truth. It ain't gonna happen until we create it. We need to become osmotic, reverse osmosis generators on our own to create a distilled environment of truth, at least partially speaking, maybe not absolutely. So we need to learn how to do these things. And we need to learn to cooperate. So respect does not go one way. It goes both ways. And when the ambassador came, I believe everybody, well, again, there's doubt as to the identity, but by this point, I guess most people believe that the identity is true. Indication, myself included, more or less. So there has been respect. Oh, Mr. Ambassador, everybody has shown respect. Some of people felt doubt. Well, obviously, the family is a so-called family. These people are a limited group, and they're very coherent. They're in communication with each other. They're very well organized. They have a credo. You know, they're very honorable, so to speak, in their own way. But everybody else is in chaos. The peasants here on the other end are all in chaos. We all have our different, you cannot judge the majority viewpoint by a few viewpoints. And there is no majority viewpoint. It's chaos. It has to be organized, brought into resonance. And you don't bring things into resonance by forcing them into a pattern. You have to find the resonant frequency. You have to find the common aspects. What do we all want? Well, we want a life. We want sovereignty. And we need to understand that we have to attain part of our sovereignty on our own. We can't just have it given to us. And when we do, we have a foundation of honor. Okay, when you attain sovereignty to a certain degree and can stand up, and I don't mean, being financially independent. I mean, really think for yourself, stand up, have a modicum of health, motivation, recognize your means, being able to engage in opportunities, and not fly off the handle at the smallest thing and blame everybody, including yourself. If you can show wisdom to yourself, you will be an honorable person. You will be living from integrity. And everybody can say, well, I'm already living from integrity. Well, apparently not enough, because you need to engage where your life is limited, where you're complaining. It's good to complain because you realize what's wrong. But what part of these complaints are things that you can actually do? Oh, but I've tried and it didn't work. Everybody tries and things don't work. But the point is, are you really engaging and listening to yourself? Is the voice of complaint drowning out everything? And again, some people are going to be pissed off. There's one commentator on YouTube that says you're criticizing people again. You're criticizing the New Agers. You're criticizing this. And it's like, yeah, see, you don't like it, do you? You don't like losing face. Nobody likes losing face. And we're just peasants. We barely have half a face to begin with. We're still trying to find our own sense of identity in that way. These other people have a very strong and rigid sense of identity, very structured. I believe it's maybe too structured and it needs to be a little more fluid. And maybe some of them also believe that. The thing is, they have to learn from us and we have to learn from them. And what we're going to learn, though, is up in the air. We don't know what we need to learn from them. They probably don't know what they need to learn from us. That's, if there's going to be a proposal, I believe it should be a beginning stage of true ambassadorship. Not just somebody like you or me or whatever going and saying, I represent the people. No, the people, so-called a group of people, because again, your viewers are not the people. They're a group. A group of people needs to discover the resonant frequency of sovereignty. Because once they do what you did, take a step toward their health, take a step toward their mind, clarity of mind, which means that they're actually engaging to reverse mind control, to reverse brainwashing, and they can thus become an example. Once they start doing that, their honor will begin to shine more. So again, this is very abstract and strange in some ways, but not so. Our sovereignty is our resonant frequency, the sovereignty of the commoners, of actually standing up for themselves. And that's what honor is for everybody. Self-sovereignty in a context is honor. But within another system, part of the honor means obedience to an authority and all of that. That's a whole, that's part of it. But even an honorable knight or an honorable noble, whatever, even they can stand up for themselves. They have integrity in themselves. They believe in their own principles, and they don't blindly follow principles. They have proven them to themselves, and thus their principles express who they are. And that's what we talked about, the hierarchy of principles. All of these things are not all that complicated, but there's a lot of things. There's a lot of small things that we need to understand in order to step away, because the first thing when I see a conflict is, okay, where am I involved in this? What is actually something that I'm responsible for? Placing blame is well and good, and all of this is the psychopaths, it's the this and that. Yeah, but what can I do? You see, it may be everybody else's fault, but I'm still responsible. No matter what. That's the whole karmic thing. That's why they say everybody chose a little baby is not responsible, but when they grow up, they are responsible to heal their traumas. They can't expect somebody else to do so. They are able to respond. That was always my sense of, if we have divine gifts, it's the gift of response ability. That ability has been undermined. Well, let us rediscover it. So perhaps if you want low funding, something that isn't going to build bridges and new infrastructure and change the whole system, which is billions and trillions, but if you want something small, let's see if we can engage in fundamentals of being able to stand on our own 2 feet as human beings from where we are. Some people might say that's a kind of alternative media thing. I don't know. I would be very careful. For me, I think it should be more flexible, because anything can be hijacked. Anything can serve certain special interests. It can infiltrate. If you make it too structured, and everybody wants structured because they all want the solutions predictable. But if you make it too structured, then it can easily be manipulated. We need to be, what's the phrase? Wily as serpents, and, wise as serpents, peaceful as doves, or anyways. But we just need to be very, very clever, but also very, very genuine. Please, people, we need to discover our authenticity. It's good to be frustrated, but frustration should not be the end of it. Frustration is there in order to make us reassess the situation, not feel trapped. And so Ron gave us an example because he felt trapped by his own body. He felt trapped by his own health. He felt death was looming. And maybe it took that extreme to actually make him listen to his body more than he's ever listened before, and actually begin to not take people's advice or reject it or accept it, but to discern through the advice, and create his own solution. That's what we need to do. I hope you can weave all these crazy ideas that I've presented together into a coherent something or other. I'm speaking generally, and I really only want to help. So thank you for listening, whether you're a commoner or somebody from somewhere else. That's all.
Thank you, Aristo, and namaste.
Namaste, Ron.
Whoops.